This is this episode, just Josh, and this is my 550th episode. Can you believe I've done 550 of these? Right, 100 of these. Oh my God, I've done 100 of these almost. That's scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been streaming kind of nonstop pretty much since the end of November. It's been cool to have all people I've never had on the show before, because I don't think you ever came on when this was just an audio show. I don't think.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, so I mean,
but I remember when you started it, because it was at When Words Collide, and I was there hanging out at the Edge table. And as a matter of fact, Claire C. Marshall was right beside you at that end of
that was my first.
The island, and we chatted. So I remember that.
Yeah. I've been trying to remember who because Rob Sawyer mentioned podcasts, and just something clicked, and was like, I can do a podcast. I think I can do a podcast, right?
Sure.
And I forget who we talked to, because someone hadn't asked them that question, it never would have came up, and I never would have done it. It goes to show you how one little thing can go. But I wanted to start, ladies and gentlemen, because she showed me. So I have this vision of this is what I would do. See, for trick or treat, this is what I would do for Halloween.
Oh yeah, if this were bigger, I'd put it on the porch.
Oh no, you don't even have, no.
Yeah.
You don't need to make it bigger though. This is what you do, right? Did you have like a door hole, like a hole where people can peep in?
Yeah, no, we don't. But I see where you're going with this. Yeah.
Yeah, just have them look at the eyes. Trick or treat. It's like then you open trick.
Okay, this is the owl from hell. This one has laser vision and is going to destroy the world.
That's right.
And every other owl that I've seen, and I collect owls. Like I've got about 50 of them at this point. All different materials. Every one of them is unique in some way, because I don't just collect owls for the sake of collecting owls. It has to say something to me. It has to, reach out to me. And this one was at a flea market in Oldsmar. I was walking along with my husband, and it made me stop in my tracks and look back, because I could not believe this malevolent owl face. Yeah. And I thought, well, I've got to have this owl for my collection.
I think it's awesome. I think it's awesome. Although I have to ask this, because this to me is the question of questions. What did the first owl say to you? Because I mean, you started that, like, you have 50 of them. So what did the first one say that made you go, I'm going to take this home?
The first owl was given to me as a gift by a fellow teacher.
Okay.
And it was, you know how they make those dolls out of corn silk? Mm-hmm. Well, this one was kind of woven. I guess it was paper made to look like colored corn silk, but it was an owl, and it had a sign around its neck that said, "Impress me." And that was the first owl that I ever got. And after that, I started looking for owls that had personality.
Okay.
So at a garage sale, I came across a plaque, and this was if Charlie Brown and an owl had a love child.
God. The image in my head. It's just like,
its eyes were spinning.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was very stressed.
Okay.
And I looked at this owl, and it looked back at me, and I said, "Tribesperson, we are of the same kin." And so I bought this owl, and it just kind of escalated from there. And for the longest time, people in my family knew if they wanted to give me a gift for any occasion, birthday, anniversary, whatever, give me an owl. It's always going to be the right gift. So my son went to Scotland. He brought me back a ruler
That's a cool ruler.
with a snowy owl.
Yeah.
You know, and I've got an owl that's a nightlight. I've got an owl that is a serviette dispenser. Like I didn't realize how many owls there were out there serving all these different purposes and, you know, made of all these different materials until I started collecting.
So I speak as a collector here. I'm not surprised, and here's why I'm not surprised. I remember I had a buddy in high school. He was obsessed with Sailor Moon, and I mean obsessed. He had everything, and for everything he got, like everything he found and bought, the one thing I still remember in my head is they actually made Sailor Moon Alphagetti. Like, they legitimately made Sailor Moon Alphagetti, and I found it.
Joking.
I saw it. It was like, I've seen everything, right? And then it just occurred to me. It occurred to me from that moment on that, you know what, we are as a race, we all are obsessed with stuff. We all have our obsessions.
Yeah.
And what's happened is smart business people have figured out that we are as a whole obsessed. We are by design. We want to get passionate about things. That's just who we are. So when you have this opportunity to explore something in depth and get good at something, that's what we seek. We seek this in life. Yeah. So, like for some, so therefore, let's provide. There's always a niche for everybody. There is somebody out there crazy about potatoes. I'm not, but there's somebody out there crazy about potatoes. There's somebody out there crazy about rocks. There's somebody out there crazy about Pez. Could you imagine a house of Pez dispensers? Just for a minute, just for a minute.
Pez dispensers all over the place.
Yeah, I could. Like we are
absolutely.
We're that kind of. We are that kind of species. We get into phases and things, and we explore things to a certain point. And how do I put this? We have interest, right? We always have interest in things we explore, because all of us, I think, are on a quest to find our passions, and that, I think, is where owls, I feel, are an interest for you. They might be a kind of an obsession. I don't know. Are you still buying owls? If you are, I will not judge you. I'm just you know, it's just because. But again, we all have these things in us that. Okay, my dad's a naturopath, but you know what? You know, he gets obsessed. Grocery stores. Why? Because in grocery stores, he knows how to take food and maximize all the health things. So he'll look at things, he'll get ideas. It's his passion. That's who he is.
Yeah.
Right? That's who he is. And because that's who he is, right? You know, you just cannot help but you realize that people get excited over their own things, their own world, and that's what makes us who we are. Right? And that's, I think, a great overall, right? Because we all, there's a pathway for everybody. There's a passion for everyone out there. You just have to look for it. And people that look for those passions inevitably find them, and they go down these rabbit holes that are like so unique. And then, but again, it's part of finding your purpose, I think, in this world, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I didn't start my collection until I had gone. Until I was in the classroom. So as a child, I didn't really collect anything. I tried. I knew people who had like stamp collections or rock collections, and I thought, well, I should have a collection, but it never really clicked. Nothing really clicked with me.
Yeah.
Until I was a teacher and I got this owl, and all of a sudden it was like, yes, this is my thing. Meanwhile, I've got my mother collects dolphins.
Okay.
I have a son who collects gems and fossils, and another son who collects models of military planes and boats.
Yeah.
And it's in the genes. You're right. And we just have to find what it is that speaks to us.
Mine is comic books. Love comics. I love
Oh yeah.
I'm a bit, well, I'm pretty open on my social feed of what kind of nerd I am. I'm pretty wide open. I think we all know I'm 12 years old. I think we all know that deep down inside. And I'm just old enough to say the word booby and still go every time I do it. And I'm just that mature or that image. Something like that. We'll figure that out. But yeah, because you want little joys, like the little joys in life, they will make it bearable. If you take like I said this on post, not going into, I don't really want to talk about COVID, but the one thing I do wholly miss from this time, hugs. It's such a little simple thing. I asked this question at the beginning of the pandemic: is a hug worth dying for? You know what? Honest to God, I think the answer is yes. As weird as it's not the hug itself; it's those little things that we get, that we do, that make it because I don't want to live in a joyless world.
No, and it's human contact.
Yeah,
we are not a solitary species. We are a social species, and we need contact with other humans.
Yeah,
and a hug is so eloquent as a gesture. It says so much,
And it's fun. It's healing. It's fun. It's sharing, right? And one of the most simplest, yet it's intimate, yet also respectful ways of doing it.
Yeah.
And you can give that to anyone, right? It's the little things in life that make it worth living. It's not the big stuff. I honestly could care less. I honestly could care less right now that right this very minute, I don't really have much to my name. That doesn't really mean anything to me. Do you know what it does? Ice cream. Why? It's a little thing, right?
Yeah.
Right. It's a little tiny thing, because it's not like, the Lamborghini would be nice, right? Or the big house is nice for a while, but like anything else in life, there's a shelf life to like that new car smell. Like, especially with like a big house, I look at it, it's like, I gotta take care of this thing now, all right? I gotta take care of it.
Yeah, that's the issue for me. Every time I see someone, who's got this beautiful mansion, they've got this huge house, my first thought is, I hope you have a live-in maid.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Because you got to keep this place clean and you got to maintain it.
Oh yeah, totally.
And
totally. Yeah. It's one of those like things about it is you recognize like again, I'm not encumbered by anything. So that's why I'm not really bothered by it, because it's like I can go anywhere I want to go. That's actually so freaking cool. But my little joys in life are books. My little joys in life are, I get to make an ass of myself in front of a live audience. And it's fun. But again, we look as a species for things that make us feel alive, because we want to feel and we want to experience things. So when we're talking like hobbies, interests, things like that, like where we started here, like owls aren't my thing. I'm not sure comics are your thing, but where we both can kind of look at each other, it's like, this makes you feel alive. There's something about that little, like you get a little joy out of that. And it makes life easier. Just look at this spooky-eyed owl that you could like literally put like on the door somewhere, right? Actually, you have like a window, like a front door window, like that people can see. Because if you can, I know the perfect place for that owl. Put like a sign that says no solicitations, and with that evil eye just looking, I guarantee you, any
evil eye,
looking at that would be like, if I knock, I don't know if I come back outside. And you know what? That works. That totally works. And I think that's I think that's valid. Like, that's a legit thing, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. But we seek little joys, all of us. That's why. We both write books. Guess what we're doing? We're making people hallucinate. Little
And
George.
stories basically got me through my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was one of those overweight bookworm kids. I was very bright. I was gifted before it was fashionable to be gifted. My teachers didn't know what the heck to do with me. And I didn't feel like a child. I felt more like an adult. I was comfortable in the company of adults. And so I didn't have a lot of friends. And by about the age of 6, I had pretty much written reality off as a bad idea. This was, it's not a welcoming place for me. So I found books. As soon as I was able to read, I started reading voraciously, and I read everything I could get my hands on. And I could escape into other people's universes that they created. And as soon as I was able to write, I started creating my own universes.
So, what was your favorite universe to escape to? We all had it. So, what one was yours?
My parents got me, like, Walt Disney movies turned into books. They were probably the first company to get merchandising going for their TV series and their books. And they had limited series that they played that ran on Walt Disney Presents every Sunday, and one of them was Spin and Marty.
Okay.
And my parents got me hardcover books that were based on these Walt Disney stories.
Huh. That's cool.
So, like, there was Spin and Marty. I also had one, they did Black Beauty.
Okay.
So I had that book. God, it was so long ago that, the thing is, I discovered science fiction when I was 11 years old. And up until that point, I had been reading, biographies. I read some nonfiction, and I was. My mom took me to the library once a week, and I checked out the maximum number of books. And when I had read every book in the children's room, I got special permission to go into the adult section. My dad collected Richard S. Prather.
Okay.
I went through his collection. So I basically was hooked on a hard-boiled detective named Shell Scott. Yeah. But I also there were a lot of TV shows that created universes that captured my interest. And I went through a phase where, every Western, like Roy Rogers, Dale Evans, Gene Autry, and their sidekicks, and Annie Oakley, and, all those Western shows. And then it was the English historical shows, Robin Hood, and with Richard Green. That was the original.
Mm-hmm.
With Richard Green, and then there was Dan Tempest in the Buccaneers, and that was Robert Shaw. So here are these big name A-list actors, and they were basically coming into my living room and befriending me, and that was a big deal to me when I was a kid.
So it's funny you mentioned that Robin Hood, because so one of my all-time favorite Bugs Bunny cartoons. So Bugs Bunny has to play the sheriff of Nottingham by himself. It's like, yeah, right. So Little John would show up every time. Don't you worry, never fear, because Robin Hood will soon be here. So the first time you see the sheriff going, oh no, not Robin Hood. It's like, yeah, you're gonna get it, and then there's no Robin Hood. So John just shrugs and just walks off. It's like, well, thanks, pal. But so throughout the episode, this happens, right? Right? Throughout this episode, finally, at the end, after Bugs just trounced the sheriff, Bugs Bunny will trounce the sheriff on his own if he has to. Little John says, don't you worry. Yeah, I know Robin Hood will soon be here. Robin Hood is like, well, where he is. And it's like, John's like, I wish he'd been nicer because there he is, turns around and it's the original Robin Hood, right there. It's like, right, yeah, because he was on it. Right? He was a little late for the action, but he was there, right? So it's funny you brought that one up because it's like, yeah, I remember. I did see a teensy tiny little bit. My mind got worked with Bugs Bunny, but that's okay. That's another story for another day. But no, I see for me, I'm a big Green Lantern guy. Like I grew up with Green Lantern.
Yeah.
For books, however, I will always have a soft spot for the Wheel of Time. Right, I will always. That was my first fantasy novel series because I for whatever reason I had all my friends going Lord of the Rings. Like, I'm not sure that's my thing, so I ended up getting the Wheel of Time. And
was that Salvatore?
No, Robert Jordan.
Ah, okay.
Robert Jordan, and so it ruined Lord of the Rings for me though because it's so much more complex than Lord of the Rings was. Like I actually think, like personally, I like The Hobbit, but Lord of the Rings for me, I can respect it for what it was and what it meant. Because without Lord of the Rings, there would have been no Wheel of Time. But I can't read it because it's too simple.
Slow. And here's the thing. I tried for 10 years. I tried to read Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get past page 100.
Yeah.
Because every time a character took a step, to the north he saw, to the west he saw, to the east he saw, and there's all this description of landscape that just, the story got slowed down to a crawl, and I couldn't stand it, and I would stop. And my husband had read the whole trilogy, and he said, if you can get past page 125, there's actually a plot there. It will grab you. You'll be fine. And so finally, one summer, I decided, if it kills me, I am going to read Lord of the Rings.
Did it kill you?
No, it didn't. But I came damn close, I'll tell you. But I did. I got past all of that introductory stuff and got into the plot, and I was able to finish it all the way through. And I thought, no, this is a really good story, but the beginning is really off-putting.
But you also have to remember something too. It was the first of its kind, really. It's the first of that kind of story in a modern setting.
That's true.
Right? It was the first one. So when something brand new comes out, right, and people liked it. Terry Brooks' Shanhara is kind of a riff-off.
Mm-hmm.
It was the first riff.
Yeah.
And like you read Terry, like Terry Brooks tells those stories so much better today. But when he started, it's very much like that style. But for me, it was Jordan. Robert Jordan was my guy, and Jordan wrote this incredibly, immaculately complex story. Right now, so you get to about and you're reading books, like you will do that. Like the first 3 are good. 4 and 5 are amazing. You will they're big, giant weapons of mass destruction sized books. You will plow right through them. They are so well done. 6 is not quite as good as 4 and 5, but it's still pretty darn good. But what do you do? Because you've already kind of you want to know where it goes now. So you're like, okay, I'll wait for book 7. Book 7, you're like, book 8, book 9. Okay, that's more like it. That's more like it. Book 10, why'd you do that? Book 11, book 11. I'm in. Like I like again with this obsessive thing. I'm in. Like it's very hard for me. It's very hard for me to bail. Like an author I did bail on.
Yeah.
Right. It's really hard for me to bail. You have to. So for me, like an author I bailed on, for example, I think I love his early books. Terry Goodkind. I loved his early first 4 books. I think are really good. I tried, but then I came to realize with Goodkind, and I get this to some degree because this is also partly the formula of publishing. well, you tell this story incredibly well. Keep telling this story and people will keep buying it, right? From a business standpoint, I get it. It's kind of true. I bought 4 more of them, right? Before I finally had enough, right? So, I mean, there is something to be said about that, but inevitably, I had enough, right? I don't mind if, like, Jim Butcher with Dresden Files, Ilana Andrews with Kate Daniels. I don't mind if a story fits a certain formula for an extended period of time, but I want to feel like something's happening that's different. I'm getting a different experience every time I'm reading it, a little bit. I think even though Ilana Andrews kind of goes in that borderline romance fantasy like line, right? The fact of the matter is those like the characters in there are so compelling that it's like, you know what, I'll read it. And kudos to Ilana Andrews, the husband and wife team that put that together. They're great. Stephen King with his stuff. Clear prose, like you get a sense of things happening. And I realized that for me, there's a very with a formula, it's great. Once you figure out how to write something, it's amazing. But one of the things you have to, where books and comics are different, comics never go to an act 3 if they can help, because it's soap opera. You want to keep it going and keep it going and keep it going.
Yeah.
That's why Spider-Man gets reset every so often. That's why Superman gets reset every so often. But books don't have that luxury because it's a much bigger commitment to a book than it is to a comic. Right? It's just and
it's a commitment to read as well. I don't know whether this is a function of growing up being told you have to finish everything on your plate, but for the longest time I felt obligated to finish reading every book I started.
Yes.
Even if it was boring me to tears, I would finish the book, and it was like almost like, I don't know, a penance that I was paying. But I would finish the book, and finally I realized, you know, if it hasn't caught my interest by 1/3 of the way through the book, it's okay to put it down. Mm-hmm. It's okay to say, you know what, this is not my cup of tea, because mm-hmm. not every book that you pick up is going to be is going to speak to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was a very hard thing to accept. I had to admit.
Yeah.
See, this podcast has taught me a very important lesson, that the universe does not revolve around me. I know that's a very hard lesson to learn.
Yeah.
And honestly, in a very weird way, it actually is a hard lesson. We only sense our scope of things in the world. So when I get this opportunity to talk to people, I get to hear their take on the world, the way they see things and do things. And I realize that, hey, you know what? I don't see the whole picture of the world, and I never will. And that's probably a good thing, because I certainly don't get it, right? But at the same time, like, it's true with books too. I will write a book that might be for 5 people. I hope it's for more than 5 people, but I might write a book for 5 people. I might write a book for 500,000 people. I might write a book for, 5 million people. Who can say for sure? Like, you look at something like Harry Potter, although J.K. Rowling's got all kinds of controversy right now.
Yeah.
It is, right? The truth of the matter is, those books are going to withstand her controversy. And the reason why is ridiculously good, and they inspired a whole generation. This generation may not be so inspired by those books, but another generation will at some point will come back and discover them, because they're good enough that they're going to be rediscovered again. And maybe there'll be a lot more forgiveness, because it's quite possible she'll have passed on by that point. That might be part of it. But also, things change, right?
Yeah, and C.S. Lewis, who wrote the Narnia books.
Yeah.
If you look at his politics, he coined the term yellow peril.
Yeah.
You know, he was so racist.
Yeah.
But Narnia, all the Narnia books have captivated children for a long, long time.
So there's a used bookstore on Paulette Street in Windsor when I was a kid. I walked in, I found Narnia for $8. I walked out with Narnia for $8. And the entire Narnia collection, like Wait, all of it? I'm in. I don't even need to see what else is in the bookstore. That's a win. Like that's just an instant win. I'm out. I'm out. Right? Because it's C.S. Lewis and Narnia. But that's it. Like we are all products of our time. Like I mean you can look at book. I can look at books now. Like books are being read now. Some of them will not age well because things are changing and things are always changing. I think trying to keep up with the pulse, although I get why on one hand. On the other hand, I also am thinking, I think at some point the conclusion is going to come. Just tell the best story you possibly can, and if you don't know, ask for help. I think we're going to become a lot more. I know I've been doing this as I've gotten older / wiser / whatever the hell I am. I ask for help. I ask for help about things a hell of a lot more now. It sounds like really, really, really simplistic, but when you're young, I can do it all on my own. I'm big and strong and stuff. I might be big and strong and stuff, but you know what? It's easier to ask for help sometimes. Just save time. Just save some time. Someone else can help you.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter how much experience you have.
Yep.
I mean, it's obvious I'm old enough to be your grandmother, right?
Yep. Oh, absolutely. Well, maybe. I'll give you. How about this? I'll say we're the same age. I'm 39. You're 39. You're like, okay. And then at the end of the year, I'll be older than you.
Okay.
Does that sound like a deal? Does that sound like a deal?
That's a good deal.
Okay.
So I've been writing for a very long time, and I've been published for a very long time. But the book that I'm working on right now, I'm working with another author, as we are exchanging chapters and alpha reading for each other. And her insights on my work and my insights on her work are making both of us better writers.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lifelong apprenticeship. It's never-ending improvement because practice won't make perfect during a lifetime. We can keep going and get as close to perfect as possible within our lifetime.
See, I'm in a weird spot with the word perfect. I'll hear me out on this. Okay, I'm in a weird spot with it, and that's this. I recognize like the ideal best story that we all have in our heads. Like, oh, this is gonna be amazing. I can tell it, and you put it on the page. Like, that didn't quite work. Like, what I have here is not what came out here, right? And then I did this when I was interviewing Mark Park a long time ago. I remembered something very, very, very valuable, and that was Cecil, of all things. Look at Cecil under a microscope, you see all these little tiny little flaws in it, right? Well, okay, so iodized salt is not the healthiest salt for us at all. Sea salt's healthier for us. And the reason why is all those little flaws. And then it occurred to me, and then to this very wonderful thought. The reason we tell the story, like every story has been told before, but what we bring to the table as writers is ourselves, right? How we tell the story is as important as the story we're telling. And then it occurred to me that maybe the perfect story isn't what I'm going for, but rather telling the best possible story I can. Right. And the reason I differentiate on that is I don't have to worry about perfect. I now just worry about if it's good. Right. Yeah. I don't does that make sense?
Yes. Yes, it does. Because, as a teacher, what we used to say was practice does not make perfect. It makes permanent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's so important when students are practicing something to make sure that what they're practicing is going to be, I hesitate to use the word correct because that's not always applicable depending on the discipline that you're in. But if it's going to stand the test of time, how about that?
That sounds about right because my favorite example of that is martial arts, right? A basic front kick.
Yeah.
your front kick's going to look different than my front kick. Not just because of your age, but just because of just, your build, your look, everything like that. But really, when you get right down to it, a front kick's a front kick, right? Right,
if it achieves what you want it to achieve, then it's great.
Yeah, exactly.
And as pilots say, any landing you walk away from is a good one.
That's right. you might want to make sure the plane is relatively intact and in one piece. I mean, it's one of those.
You want to make sure you're in one piece, which is more to the point.
It's more important than the plane. It's like, but there are priorities. Like, are the people okay? Yes. Is the plane okay? Yes. And you try to do that. I mean, because they do get a little mad at you when pieces of the plane do not come back with you. What happened?
That's right.
What happened to the wing? There was this thing up in the sky. It was a balloon. I swear, it was a balloon. They don't buy that so much. Yeah. But
it was more likely to be a Canada goose. Those birds are vicious. I'm sorry.
They are. They're mean. They are so mean. You just brought back another childhood memory, actually. Although not of goose, of turkeys. My mom once upon a time worked at a farm, and we would go with her occasionally on weekends to work with her. And man, I would take eggs from turkeys. Those turkeys were mean. They were mean birds.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I can't blame them. Looking back, I mean, we're taking their eggs. I wouldn't be happy if they did that. What I eventually did, I got tired of dealing with the mean birds in the nest, and I got a broom. They always do the area where they frolic. Well, you have to chase them to get the eggs there. That's what I did. I just would chase them all morning. It was great. I need a nap at the end of the day. Mom was happy about that. But I get eggs as well, right? So I mean, it's one of those. It's one of those things where I remember. But yeah, no, man. Some of those birds you think are, they look so great. No, they're mean. They are mean birds.
And the thing is, they can really hurt you.
Yeah.
Those, like they are strong. We have swans. We have a nesting pair of swans on the bay where I live, and the male, his head has to be, when he's just standing there being a swan, his head has to be about 2 meters above the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And he spreads his wings, and one smack with those wings can probably take your head off. So like birds, I can believe that they evolved from dinosaurs, or rather devolved. No, they evolved. That they evolved from dinosaurs because they are deceptively strong.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a mean temperament.
Well, it's also because of nature itself. Like I've learned this too. Like I'm a nice, warm, cool guy. I've also had to learn how to be tough and a little mean and a little vicious when called upon, because the world requires it. We live in a world where sometimes like the nice guys finish last thing, or the nice person finishes last thing. Where that comes from is not knowing when to draw in line with your boundaries. So especially in a place where things are trying to eat you, bigger, stronger, nastier things are trying to eat you.
Yes.
You're going to develop a big, nasty, mean streak in you because it's going to keep you alive, right? And that's like there's a balance there, right? You have to be able to turn it off, right? Because if you don't turn it off, a buddy worked on another farm story. They were these really mean. There was these really mean pigs. So when so his boss, when he'd go on vacation, right, he'd find the ones that were very pliable and he'd keep those, and the ones that were a little nasty, he'd sell those. He'd trade them. It's like, you know what? We're gonna trade you in for something a little better because your temperament sucks, right? And that's
yeah.
Because there's a point that doesn't really serve you well either, right? So. But in the wild, and when it's just it's you in the world, you have to be tough. You have to have a little bit of that mean streak, because
survival instinct.
Yeah, that's where that comes from, right? So I mean, on one hand, you understand it. It's like, okay, they should be afraid. They should be ready to fight, because honest to God, as a species, by and large, we are not. We should not. They should not trust us. They really shouldn't. We are the apex predators of the planet. We have been for a very long time. I'd be mean and nasty to me too if I was them, because eventually you might end up in my belly if you're not, and that's a very. I mean,
yeah,
that's a very real thing.
But it's technology that's put us at the apex, because when you look at, we don't have fangs, we don't have claws.
Mm-hmm.
We're not really fast runners.
No.
We have lots of vulnerable spots.
Sure.
And the only thing that's kept us alive is technology.
Mostly agree. I actually think it's three things: our ability to make tools, the ability to solve problems and think for ourselves and solve problems. We're adaptable. There's not very many species on this planet that can adapt to any environment like we do. There are, like, say what you will about a polar bear, but a polar bear in a tropical place, although it is very, 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 very still a tough bear, is not home for that bear. That bear will never be comfortable there. We, on the other hand, can be comfortable in the sun, the moon, like anywhere on this planet.
Yeah.
We can find a way to survive in it, which is something that again, that puts us in line with the almighty cockroach. I mean, that's the only other thing that can do that. So tools that, but also the fact is, like, we don't necessarily have, we don't use, the fact is you have a ton of wealth of knowledge. You've been alive a very, very long time. If we were another species, you might have been wiped out. But because you haven't been, your experiences, although very criminally undervalued by the system in general, right? Your parent, your kids, your grandchildren, your friends, all can respect you as a person for your experiences that you've been through. You can learn from your experiences, right? Now, maybe we don't agree with your conclusions, but that doesn't invalidate your experiences, and we have that ability. So dolphins do that. Number 3, right? Monkeys can do number 1, right? And cockroaches can do number 2. We're the only one that can do it in all 3. And that's why we win.
Yeah, I did some research for a story, and I found out that 4 million years ago, our climate changed.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the trigger for our species to develop a larger brain.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that larger brain, we were able to adapt. Mm-hmm. And that was the watershed moment, really. So changing climate made us smarter.
Yeah. So.
And that's what it was. And you're right. We adapted. Species died out because they couldn't adapt. Mm-hmm. Species are dying out now because they can't adapt.
Yes.
And it's you're absolutely right.
Yeah, it like technology. I mean, it's interesting because I've said this on a few podcasts. I've actually finished just a little dystopian about this concept. We're in a very weird Tower of Babel right now, in the sense that it's not a tower of one language, one thought, but one light, one dark. The fact of the matter is, like, if you look at the basis of where computers come from, it's the medium of on and off, the binary. It's more evolved now. It's not that anymore. But I look at the fact that there's a light bulb on, and I look at the fact that I am taught, because that medium existed, it has led to the point that you and I are having a conversation. Although we are in the same province, we are literally in the same province. We are still very far away and still having this conversation practically in real time. Which, when you really sit there and think about that, it's incredible. That's the great thing about it.
Yeah.
Right? But there are downsides to it too. We've created a very artificial system in the world. And I cannot help but think that some of the problems we have as a species are a result of creating this artificial system in the world. So if somehow, some way that light went out, pop, tomorrow, we wouldn't be caring about this pandemic. We'd have bigger problems, much, much bigger problems.
Yeah.
And
Y2K.
oh, Y2K, but also like the tower falling. When the Tower of Babel fell in the story, people started fighting each other because they couldn't understand each other anymore, right? And the same thing would happen. Something similar would happen. We would become, I think, a lot more tribal and local for a long time.
Yeah.
Bridges would be built again inevitably because it's the nature of the human race to socialize, ultimately. But that doesn't mean that there wouldn't be a hell of an adjustment period, right? And there would be almost like a cascade effect of everything shutting down. And then we would rebuild it all over again. Something hope maybe better, something maybe worse, who knows, right? But like our technology in one sense, it's a wonderful thing. But I also, again, in this time, I realized it's a very fragile thing too. It's amazing how much we take for granted because of it.
Yeah, yeah. For example, I watch a TV show called Mayday. Have you ever seen that?
No, I'm not cool enough for television anymore.
It's about airplane disasters and the investigations that come afterward and how they determine what caused the plane to crash or whatever happened. And very often, the problem is that pilots have forgotten how to fly their planes because these great big Airbuses are computer controlled.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of the job of flying the plane has been handed over to the computer that if anything happens to the computer, if you don't remember how to fly a plane, basically that's it for you. You and all your passengers, you're doomed. There was a story that I remember reading from an anthology when I was in high school. The anthology was called Man and His World, and the story was by E.M. Forster. And it was called The Machine Stops. And it was about a post-disaster world. People had been forced to go underground because they'd made the surface of the world uninhabitable. And so they had a network of tunnels. People lived in these little dugout cubicles. And they relied on technology to provide their life support and to provide the necessities of life. So they never left their cubicles. They stayed in these little cubicles. They had a screen that was divided up in segments. They could have conference calls with their friends in other cubicles. Whatever they needed was delivered via robots. So there was, everybody was living in a very isolated in a small room, in a cell. And then the machine breaks down. And they're forced to come out of their cubicles. And they're all terrified to go up to the surface because they remembered it, or I guess this is generations later, so they were taught that it would kill them if they went up top. Mm-hmm. And finally, one person decides, we can't stay down here. We got to do something. He goes up top and discovers that the Earth has recovered completely from the disaster, and it's a Garden of Eden up there.
Yeah.
And the problem is, I think we're still living in our little cubicles right now.
Oh, sure. No, it's. So I'm playing a game called Final Fantasy 13 right now. I'm a video gamer. I don't watch TV very much. I play video games. So the interesting thing about this I look at is the fact that every human being is literally in this artificial moon inside the planet called Cocoon. And I thought it was such a really perfect name for it because it's that we are constantly fighting a very common fear. We always seek a disaster order in the face of like some assurance of control, because that's also our downfall, because sometimes the people where you're giving control to aren't people that should be trusted, but that's another conversation for another day. But the point is, we always seek that order, right? So in that story, it's interesting. People had gotten so fearful of what was outside because they had been so long in this room, in this. They saw anything on the outside as evil or the invader or again, that fear. And it's interesting to me in one very real sense. We're kind of going through this now, right? If I were to say 200 years ago, if a preacher would come up to me and say, "There's evil inside you, and you should join this whatever to do this," and now we're looking at today. Okay, I mean, we're gonna come to a head of the lockdown thing in Canada sooner than later, personally, because I don't think what we're doing right now is that sustainable, and I think everybody's getting tired, right? But that fear of the fear of the disease is making us go, okay, maybe we should hold off on that. Right, and it's created this uncertainty. So we've leaned into hiding in the cocoon, but at some point we're gonna have to bust out. I think at some point, because otherwise we'll be afraid of what's outside, and that's kind of a terrifying thought.
Yeah, I don't know that you can draw a parallel between the lockdown and the effect of technology on us. I've seen people in restaurants sitting across the table from each other, and they're not even looking at each other, but they're having a conversation on their phones.
Yeah.
And technology has put up barriers between us. Absolutely. Rather than drawing us together, it has actually put up barriers between us. And people don't know anymore how to relate on a direct one-to-one level with other people. So, no, what I was about to say, just about lost my train of thought here, but that's okay.
That's okay. We're just chatting, right? So we're just chatting, doing our thing.
No, right? but I think no, the lockdown is not it's not what's the word I'm looking for? Hermetically sealed. We're not completely locked up.
No.
Like in a cell. You can still go out to get groceries. You can still, get your medication. People who are living in the same family and in the same bubble, that's okay. You can socialize among your own little group. So it's not the same thing. I think what needs to be done in this province, quite honestly, and I don't know how practical or feasible it is, but it would take care of the virus PDQ. And that is, and this idea was actually given to me by my husband, and he did it ages ago. He said, you know what we really need? We need to lock the province down completely for 3 weeks. That's how long it takes for the virus to die out.
Yep.
Just, you have 1 day to go get whatever you need, and then that's it. You're home for 3 weeks. You don't go out of the house. You don't, whatever it is, and the virus will die off. But here's the thing, Josh. We are behaving like a virus. And I've often said that, planet Earth has an immune system, and we're seeing that immune system in action. We're seeing the tornadoes, we're seeing the tsunamis, we're seeing the wildfires. All of these are part of a refreshment, a rejuvenation that the planet goes through on a regular basis. And this is a cycle. But we have added an element to that is throwing the cycle off kilter.
So
It's carbon dioxide. We're releasing so much carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. We're creating the greenhouse. We're amplifying the greenhouse effect, and it's causing the polar ice cap to melt, which is fresh water mingling with the salt water in the ocean. It's throwing the ocean currents off. It's causing all kinds of devastation. It's that one element, and it's us.
I'm going to be careful how I word this, because it's okay. I'm going to agree with your conclusion, but not quite how you worded it. Now,
Okay.
let me.
It's first draft. Go right ahead.
Yeah. It's the problem isn't, I think, us in the sense that there's how many of us are out there. The problem is how we've been consuming things.
Yeah.
Up until this point, it's to be very specific. Something I said at the very earlier in the conversation was that we have created a very artificial system, and we have, and it's been this way for a very, very long time. Yeah. Ever since oil has become the primary power source of the planet, right? And now, as we seek other sources of power, and that's also what's going on right now. We've created a drastic impact on our environment. The fact that we grow our food in oil, we do everything. We did everything with oil for such a long, long time. It's created a lot of the issues we have, right? We've created like, and then on top of that, like, we had so much abundance when this started. We've done what everybody does with abundance. We all do this. We're all guilty of this part. We all squander it a little bit because we have so much of it. We don't need it, all this. So if we lose some of it, it's like, meh, there's plenty more, right? That's our nature. That's the part of the human nature is kind of that. But here's the thing. We could theoretically, I think, if distribution was better, if distribution was a lot more balanced across the globe, we'd probably be a lot more in sync and in kilter right now. But the fact of the matter is, we have a very very old system that's been there for over 100 years, still making decisions for us that are no longer valid.
Yeah.
And that's the real problem. I don't necessarily think it's a human being necessarily. It's how we function as a society at this point. Talking about the virus and the lockdown stuff, right? I've been very, very not blaming people too much for what's been going on. And the reason why is I simply have to look at my leadership.
Could you say that again more slowly? I missed it.
So I have not blamed too many people for what's going on about how they behave or misbehave correctly or incorrectly, because it starts at your leadership.
Yes.
Right? It starts there. And the fact of the matter is, not one leader in our country has any credibility. Not one. Right? Simply because if this virus was so dangerous, why did we send kids to school? If this virus is so dangerous, why are we letting people work? If this virus is so dangerous, and these are very simple things, but again, once you ask yourself those questions, why is it okay for someone to go flip a burger at Burger King, but I can't go outside and go hang out with my friends? They're mingling with how many people on a day in, day out basis? My personal favorite is going to a restaurant. When I sit down, I have to take the mask off. I can go out and I can eat and interact outright. So what difference does it make if I wear a mask in that building? It doesn't matter because I'm taking it off anyway. So there is a hypocrisy in how we've approached this. Your husband would have been correct if this had been the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Now that won't work either, for one very, very simple reason. We're fatigued. Like if you really, when you get right down to it, like we are incredibly fatigued with how we've been doing this. And
Yeah.
at this point, if if they were to tell me it's only going to be for 3 weeks, I wouldn't believe them. And can you blame me?
No, honestly, I can't.
Yeah,
Yeah, that it has been mishandled everywhere except New Zealand and Australia.
Japan. Japan handled it.
Japan?
Japan handled
Okay.
it. Japan did not lock down. Actually, what Japan did. This is what Japan did. Japan did do contract tracing at a very early phase in this. They had their own, like any country that had gone through a pandemic prior to this, right? They did not lock down. What they basically did is they paid everybody to stay home, and if someone got infected, they would trace where that infection was and root it out, right? It was not. They did it. They did it their own way. Now they always had cases, but their cases were always small and manageable, right? As a result of it. Now they've had their biggest issue was the U.S. military people stationed over there, not their own people. So I mean, it's one of the, but again, but you're also looking at a country, right? You're also looking at a country that was consistent, and that was honestly the key. No one's any country that had a consistent method of doing it did okay.
Yeah.
Right? Didn't matter. It didn't matter. Like, say what you want. I mean, everybody kind of grounds with Sweden, but they were consistent, right? Right? Japan was consistent. Australia was consistent. Well, Australia was kind of weird. New Zealand was consistent, right? New Zealand was consistent. That was it. It was done. It was over with, right? So I mean, they never. So I mean, what? It's not. We mishandled. Our mishandling really starts and ends with the example we provided. Now, I do think, regardless of where the disease is at the end of the year, I think the lockdowns are going to come to an end, because I know that, like, the United States is gearing up to open everything up by the end of the year, and I know that when that does happen, the rest of the world's going to open up regardless, right? Because,
well, hopefully we'll have herd immunity by then. There will be enough people vaccinated,
yeah,
that the ICUs won't be overloaded. The thing is with the vaccines, even just getting the first shot
mm-hmm.
is about 80% effective, which means you may catch it, but it's not going to put you in the hospital and it's not going to kill you. Mm-hmm. And I really think that at the end of the day, this is going to become something endemic that we just accept. It's here. We mm-hmm. have it. It's like the flu. Some people get the flu and others don't. And there's a vaccine available for people to get a flu shot, mm-hmm. but it's voluntary. Mm-hmm. And we've learned how to deal with it. We know how to treat it, and that will be it.
I'll know when this is more of a past and future, when there's multiple treatments to it. A guy like me, because that's when I know, like, it'll be fully handled. A guy like me, like, I'm waiting 2 years before I even touch a shot, and that's because I'm a bit of I looked at the history of some of this stuff, and it's like, you know what, 2 years is a good time to make sure everything's kind of as is. Mm-hmm. That's a good time for me, because there is a lot of pressure and a lot of it. Like, I talked a little bit about some other people, some of the other shows, and what it comes down to me is expectations creates a lot of pressure, and it wouldn't be the first time something screwed up. So I'm kind of like, I'm going to wait 2 years. It's going to be chaos for this year. It's going to be probably the most chaotic of the next couple of years. It'll get better in the year after. It'll get better in the year after. And we'll kind of just see how things stand at mm-hmm. that point, right? Yeah. Because I'm of the mindset that the whole goal should be to do the body no harm, right? And right this minute, because of how fast everything has kind of magically come together, my tendency is just go cautious, kind of just see how things play out. I'm very fortunate in the sense that I'm not immunocompromised in any way, shape, or form. I don't get sick very often, and even if I do get sick, I usually recover excessively quickly. Now, it doesn't make me Superman. It definitely, I mean, it's all about risk versus reward. But the reality of the situation is, again, I'm wary, I think, but not. I'm wary but hopeful, and that's kind of where I sit on this.
Mm-hmm.
And but even without, I do, like, again, I do get the feeling that something's going to change this year, regardless, because we have to. We can't sit like this forever, and I get,
we're gonna reach a tipping point.
Yeah. Yeah, we are reaching it. You can kind of sense it. We're reaching it, and that's there's a measure of control, or at least a start of a measure of control. So going forward, there will be more, right? But I'm of them, and I've said this, like, I'm gonna wait 2 years. Because typically that's typically how long vaccines are tested normally anyway. So you're right, and so
these vaccines have all been tested according to scientific models.
There's no long-term studies. There's no long-term studies.
No, that's true. There hasn't been time for a long-term study.
That's right.
But when you're in a desperate situation, sometimes you have to keep your fingers crossed and do the thing that looks the best thing to do. And in our case, it's the elderly, it's the immunocompromised people, it's healthcare workers. It should be teachers as well, although they've been down on the list for a while, but I think with all the cases that are being reported in schools, in various school districts, that's going to change. I'm hoping. But, you protect the people who are most vulnerable. And if you are, I'm glad that you're healthy, that you are strong. You've got a much better chance of surviving this.
I might not, like here's the thing, like, I might not even notice it. That's the other thing, right? Some people get it and it's not even like, I got it, cool. Other people get it, it knocks them on their ass for weeks, forever, or some people still recovering, right?
And there are long-term effects as well that can go on for months and even years afterwards. Sure. As long as you're wearing a mask to protect other people around you who may not be as strong and as healthy as you are, then hey, fine. But we have my mother and my mother-in-law are both in their 90s. Touch wood. They are, and they've been vaccinated. And my husband and I have had our first shots because we are their caregivers and we have to make sure. But I've got sons in their 40s who are going to be waiting for a while to get the vaccine. So it's
like I said, for me, it's just really simple. I have, there is a lot of pressure for results now, and ultimately, like, my whole concept is do the body no harm, right? So so I can wait. There are other people that may not be able to wait, and maybe they should go first, and that's great, right? And that's totally fine. Like, again, you gotta do what you feel is right. But for me, I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna wait and see, and because again, it's just one of those things. Like it's not really the science I'm questioning. Right, it's the ethics of some of the people that, right, and the fact of the matter is, if that's, like, seriously, you really sit there and think about this. But basically, we say our best answer is people that have a record of not exactly being upfront with me, giving me experimental drugs. That's, that is the. We can break this down any way we want, but right.
Yeah, you know, you can stand on both sides of the argument, and both sides are equally valid. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah. It's so I like I said,
so
I'm gonna wait for that reason because it's just like it's just I'm gonna wait. Other people, again, I get it. Like if you want to go, go because it's you got to do what's right for you
yeah,
ultimately, right? And
yeah,
that's the important thing, right? And you do what's right. You let it let things like again. I can afford to let things play out. Other people might not be able to afford to let things play out,
no,
right?
that's true. That's true.
Right. So I'm going like again. I'm going to do this. I'm just again. I'm going to play. I'm going to play the like my version of the caution game, right? I'll boost my immune system. I'll do all kinds of other things. I know what to do. I'll do that because I know that works for me, and I take my chances because I take my chances, right?
Because
That's
you
why.
can.
Yeah.
Because you can
Yeah.
afford to.
Yeah.
You know, and as I said, that's great.
Yeah. Totally.
You know, and more power to you.
Yeah. But
You
that's
know, but
yeah. That's
people
it.
in yeah, people in my situation, we've got to think a little differently.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
you gotta weigh it and you gotta make your own decisions and you know what I hope I'm just being cautious for this like for me as for the sake I hope I'm I'm completely and totally off my gourd. I hope so, right? I don't mind looking like a fool. I can afford to look foolish, right? So that's my hope. So that
okay.
all said, that all said,
That all said, can I just say one thing?
sure.
I just want to say how much I appreciate the positive messages that you have been posting on Facebook.
Yeah.
They're inspirational. They are positive. They're exactly what we need these days.
Well, it's easy. How to put this? It's easy to be negative because honestly, so it's funny you mentioned C.S. Lewis. So when this first started, I remembered C.S. Lewis reading. He would read what would become Mere Christianity during World War II on the BBC radio when London was being bombed. On the one hand, you can argue that is the dumbest thing ever. Why the hell would you do that now of all times? But upon reflection, I realized something very valuable. Why, if you're not going to do it now, when are you going to do it? Again, going back full circle to our conversation, how it starts, it's the little things that prove we keep living. It's not the big things don't matter,
Yeah.
right? Right. I don't generally talk politics because the honest truth is most of our leaders don't know our game, right? Me and you have agreed to disagree about our approach and action. That's fine, right? I mean, but honestly, granted, who cares? Here's what matters. What's your favorite color? What's your favorite thing about ice cream? What makes like? What's your favorite owl? What are you writing? Like you working about? Because these life goes on. Like here's the, like
Yeah.
that's the important thing. Like life goes on, no matter what. Um, no matter what, um, you have to live and you have to make and you have to take a risk. You have to, and now just the big things and little things. You have to go to somebody to say, I love you. Maybe they don't love you back the same way, but that's what makes life work. We're living is you find out, right? So marrying mere Christianity is that sign of life and joy, no matter how bad it is in that moment, will still go on. This too will pass. As the quote a very old text, this too shall pass.
Yeah.
And while and this will pass, and when it does, and when it inevitably does, you know, the little things are still going to be there. Then they might not look the same. Maybe you know the next generation will not grow up with a Pez dispenser, right? Maybe the next generation gets something even cooler. I don't know about you, but I get
Yeah.
jealous of some of the toys I see from like kids. It's like those toys are so much cooler than mine were, right? But that's the thing, like little like that being positive, going around telling people they appreciate that they're appreciated. I've been doing that. I've been quietly letting people know that they matter in this world because that's the secret to life. Like, I can be mean, I can be miserable, I can be, oh my God, the world is gonna end. But then I'd be like everybody else, scared. This is the time. This is the time to be. I'm not saying I'm pissed off, but more than anything else, that what's going on. But so what? It's here. I got to make the best of it. Why be miserable? Why, like, everybody's trying to find their own answers right now, and let them.
That's the difference between life and existence.
Yeah.
And if you can't reach out, if you can't step out of your comfort zone from time to time, if you can't appreciate the little things and be happy, you know, what is happiness to me? Happiness is sharing my stories. You know, being able to do that makes me happy. Listening to my granddaughter on the phone, who has learned how to speed dial me and say, hi.
That's awesome.
You know, that makes me happy. You have to find, the thing is, it's not going to drop into your lap. You have to find it. It takes effort, and nothing worthwhile is going to come without some kind of effort.
Sure.
You know, you have to be open to it. You have to be watching for it. You have to recognize it by how it resonates inside of you. And then you have to embrace it. And that's, you know, that's what life, for me, that's my philosophy of life.
So I get the sense, I could be totally wrong. If I am, call me on it. Right? You're not, I don't get the sense you're a biblical person. I could be wrong on that, but I don't get that sense, and that's okay. Right? That's okay. But this, I think my favorite story, I think my all-time favorite, like, I love the Tower of Babel. We talked about that earlier, but the other one I really liked was Solomon, the king.
Yeah.
He decided he would do everything under the sun, and he did. He did absolutely everything under the sun he possibly could. He was the king. Anything he imagined, he did. And then when it was over, he still did some of the things he imagined. I imagined, but that's neither here nor there. Solomon had his flaws, but at the end of the day, you can conclude that really in life, there's only 3 things that matter. Right? He said, your first love, food in your belly, God. That's it. So I mean, you now, whether you believe in God or not, that's cool. I'm not here to preach it, but it's the other 2 I'm really going to focus on here. What he's really saying really is, like, the basic simple pleasures of happiness, whatever those things are, for me have always been this. We have the freedom to pursue whatever we want to pursue. We have the freedom to be whoever we want to be. We, in this life, that is our greatest gift. And we can always start again. We can always go forward. The courage is going out there and finding your passions, right? And that takes courage. But the other thing too is, and I realize this as I got older / wiser or something, right? It's doing things you love with people you love. Because honest to God, you have very little control over anything else, right? You have very little control. I can't, tomorrow, meteors might fall from the sky and be like, and it's over. Tomorrow, I might not wake up. Tomorrow, I could be a millionaire. Tomorrow, right? I could suddenly show up. A rocket ship might come take me away. Who knows? All things are possible. I do not dismiss any of these things, no matter how fantastic they sound, because life is a strange and magical and wonderful place. But what I can do in this life is I can choose the people I want to spend my time with. I can choose what I want to do, and occasionally hear God laugh sometimes with my plans on how I'm going to do it. Right?
God always laughs. That's actually a Jewish saying.
Yeah, I know he does.
We make plans and God laughs.
That's right. That's how you make God laugh. Tell me plans, right? It's true. we make plans, it doesn't work. Sometimes it does. Most of the time, that never works the way I imagine it does. Sometimes it's better. Sometimes it's worse. That's life is filled with surprises. But I can be passionate. I can choose in this time, no matter what people may think about my views on things. I can choose to say, you know what? I believe in you. I want you to succeed. I want you to go for it. Because honestly, right now, that's what we all need. I believe in you. I think you're a wonderful human being. I think you're a great writer. I think that your owls are incredibly. That is an incredibly spooky ass owl. I'll never like. For me, it's not for me, but I am glad you bring joy. You have joy. I love that your granddaughters speak dialect. Those are the best things in life, and I'm grateful you have them. Right? I'm grateful you do, because we all deserve those little things, I think.
Oh, you are a philosopher, my friend.
Sometimes.
I think we're all part-time philosophers, but you've been putting it out there for the rest of us to see in your daily messages and in the encouragement that you offer to everyone. And it's, frankly, it's uplifting.
Good. Trying to make me blush. It's working. But I say this, like, and I say this with all honesty, like, whatever you believe, about 13 years ago, I met death, or met the shadow of death, and I understood that I have only so much time on this planet, and ever since that moment, I've recognized, like, I got things to do, and I'm going to go do those things, and I recognize that, like, nobody is my enemy. And there are people that I don't like, but no one really is my enemy. It's really, I'm here to do what I'm here to do. You're here to do what you're here to do. I'm going to make you laugh. I'm going to make you cry. I'm going to piss some people off. I'm going to make mistakes. And hopefully I learn from all of that. And that's all I really care about at this point, because, again, there's just so little else I can do. I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. We're going to see the waves that happen as a result of it. Hopefully I make the world a better place than when I leave it in. And hopefully if I teach anybody anything, it's this: you can always get back up. That's what I hope. Like, if you can get back up, and then that's it. You can always get back up. That's what I hope. If I've done that, I've done good, right? And if I've helped people with their dreams, great. But again, people take from me whatever they want to, and that's true with everybody else, right? So I just do my best. That's all you can do, and that is the closest thing you'll ever get to hear me humble.
Well, I think your best is pretty damn good.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I've enjoyed our discussions throughout the year. So, and it's great to have you on the show. We probably should promote something of yours, shouldn't we? Probably just something. So,
I'm sorry, say that again.
We probably should promote something of yours at some point, shouldn't we? Yeah.
Yes, let's do that.
Okay, so what's your most recent? So, is something coming up? Or did you just release something?
There's a book coming out later on this year. It's called Adventures in Godhood, coming from Brain Lag Press. And the publisher, Catherine Fitzsimmons, I spoke to her about this, and I said, what do you want me to say about the book? And she said, whatever you feel like. She's making the official announcement in June of the release, but she said, tell Josh that it will be exclusive to his podcast for 2 months.
Ooh.
So you're getting an exclusive here.
Nice.
Okay. Nice. You've heard the expression, the God in the machine?
Mm-hmm.
Well, my book is about what happens when the God in the machine turns out to be a trickster hiding out in the dryer at the local laundromat.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Need I say it's humor?
No joke. This is back when I was watching TV. They did a reality show called Last Comic Standing. one of their assignments was to see if they could crack people up in the laundromat. Like, you actually do their thing in a laundry, because laundromat is like the last place people go to lie. Legitimately, you're going in there to clean your crap, literally. And
Yeah.
And it's like, so the last thing you guys got kind of come up to you is, hey, listen, can I tell a few jokes? They'll be bad, I promise. And it's like, okay, I hear you. I got nothing to do, right? So you have a captive audience. It's the great thing. But no one's gonna lie. You mean, you gotta work hard. I mean, your trickster guard's got his work cut out for him, unless he's just cutting all kinds of evil, zany stuff. So,
Well, as a trickster, he's decided to grant wishes, but not exactly the way that people expect.
the most horrifying thing you can actually do is give people what they think they want. That's the most horrifying thing you can do to anybody. I realized this when I figured out the nature of that. Everybody does exactly what they want, whether they realize it or not. Once I figured that out, it's like, what if they actually don't consciously know what they want? Oh, oh, your trickster is I'm taking, he's not really a Bugs Bunny. He's more like Loki.
Yeah, sort of. He has a soft spot for us though, so that's good.
So he's closer to Bugs. He's closer to Bugs then.
Okay, a little closer to Bugs.
Okay, he's closer to Bugs. Okay, he's closer to Bugs. Bugs Bunny is probably one of my favorite tricksters of all time. So, and we did mention Looney Tunes earlier, so that's cool.
Anyway, so that's complete. That's coming out. Now there'll be a cover reveal in July, I think, and then the book will be coming out late in the fall.
Okay, so then, okay, we'll talk about what we can do about that after the show in terms of image for the show. But for those people wondering, repeat it again. What's the book called?
It's called Adventures in Godhood. It's coming out from Brainlag Press, and the official announcement's going to be made in June. So there's no use going to their website to look for it yet. It's still in production.
Well, for me to you, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's a great achievement. So,
and there's also in the works. There are other novels that I have out there that I'm hoping will click, and so we'll just have to see what happens. And for readers of Sic Transit Terra, there is going to be a book 7. It's in the plotting stages right now, and it's going to pick up directly from where book 6 left off, but it's going to be a standalone. So,
awesome.
So there's all that going on.
So, I think to wrap this up, actually, we can keep going. How much longer do you got? Because I could ask a couple more questions, or we can get to the plugs.
You can ask me more questions.
Okay,
sure.
I'll ask you a couple more, and then we'll go full circle on this and have people find you to wrap this up. So, because I do have a very interesting, like, I tried writing comedy with my first book, The Cloud Diver, a little bit, and I'm somewhat successful. Somewhat. Some of my jokes were funny. Others maybe not so much. But
it's subjective. Humor is a very subjective thing.
Well, that's what I was about to get to. Like because humor. So I would say, like, tension's easy to write because we all understand struggle. All of us do on some level.
Yeah.
Humor is like humor and joy are the hardest two things to write. Because humor, it really comes down to how people read that voice, right? Because it doesn't always translate.
Humor on the page is a bitch. Yes. I'll be very honest.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to do when you're doing stand-up and you can read the room and you're getting reactions immediately to what you're saying, and you can switch gears and I have never done stand-up, but I've read about writing humor and about writing jokes for stand-up and so on. The thing about comedy and humor is that it allows people to put distance between themselves and the real world. And we have to do that. We need to do that from time to time because the world is so damn ugly out there that if we can't push it off and take a breath, our lives will be a tragedy. So, but it's a catch-22 because in order to have humor, you need distance. So distance provides humor provides distance, but in order to have, it's a chicken and egg. You need distance in order to have humor. And there are three kinds of distances. And I'll just tell you one anecdote just to illustrate. When I was a teacher, I got very, very involved in after-school dramatics. And I was at a school that had a reputation for putting on big splashy musicals. They did Oklahoma, they did A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, that kind of thing. The local newspapers used to send reviewers to their performances. They were that good at it. And there was one year, there was a job action. And so we got off to a late start. And I was very much involved in the theatrics at the school. And I suggested You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. I'd seen the show performed in Los Angeles with Gary Berghoff in the title role. I really loved it. I had the script. I said, you know, we can do this. We can pull this together in the time that we have left, and we can actually put on a decent show. So they said, fine. So great. We're ready for dress rehearsals. And the principal of the school decides we need an audience. And so he invited the children from the surrounding theater schools to come in for a matinee performance of You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. And my student actors are out there, and they're putting their heart and soul into their performances, and dead air, no laughter. They're coming off stage saying, you know, Mrs. Marks, what are we doing wrong? And I knew exactly what was happening. And I said, don't worry about it. Opening night, they're going to be falling off their chairs. Don't worry. Opening night, we had an audience of adults. They were killing themselves laughing. The difference was those kids sitting in the audience were looking at their daily lives being acted out on stage. They didn't have that temporal distance to appreciate the humor. The adults in the audience on opening night were looking back on childhood and seeing the absurdities, and they were enjoying themselves and laughing themselves silly. That's what I mean by putting distance. You have to have distance in order to appreciate the humor. And that enables you to appreciate the absurdities of life, because life is full of absurdities.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah,
no, God, life is always filled with absurdities. So, for me, a writer I really admire, he writes both comics and novels. It's Peter David. He also has written for television as well.
I know the name.
Yeah, Peter David can do in the same story really funny stuff, but also really serious stuff. Right? His voice just lends itself. He's just got just enough of a dry wit that you'll catch it and you just start going you start cracking. I was like, this is funny, right? This is funny.
Yeah.
And he's good at that. He's really, really good at that. And then I figured out something, not just Peter David, but other writers do sometimes. I realized that this helps. And it was ironically Spider-Man that taught me this lesson in particular. Peter Parker, when he's Spider-Man, he always cracks jokes. The reason he isn't scared to death. It occurred to me that when I'm reading Spider-Man, that not all his jokes were funny. And then I thought about that. Wait a minute, why would they put stuff in there that was deliberately not funny? It wasn't that it was deliberately not funny. It was deliberately bad. And one of the things I realized is, I get it now. Because comedy's got its own kind of music to it, right? It has its own flow.
Yes.
So you have to, to emphasize the flow, not every joke can be of the same quality. Some need to be bad, some need to be great, and some have to be somewhere in the middle, because what you're doing is you're taking your
Yeah.
audience on a and down, up and down ride. If you look at literature, like one of the great geniuses of like science fiction and fantasy is Terry Pratchett. He's a genius.
Oh, I love Terry Pratchett. I collect Terry Pratchett as well
Yeah.
as
Oh,
Alice.
absolutely.
Yes.
He is one of the best. Although he's no longer like he'd be. I would accuse him of writing literature, and if you read his books, you'll get the joke I just played. If you don't know, don't worry about it. You just read one of his books, you'll understand. But the thing about that too, not all his jokes are funny either. If you actually read it, like some of them are insanely funny. Some of them are just like eh, but it's because you have those little ends, right? When you get to the really good punchlines, you're laughing your ass off, right? Because he's just so good. But he builds them up. You realize as a performer, as a storyteller, that you don't always lead with your best material. You read with material because again, we're playing with feelings, and laughter in particular. You're going after a particular laugh or joy. You can't always go right. Every joke, because then eventually everybody's gonna like, okay, this isn't funny anymore. It's too right.
Yeah.
Not Robin Williams. Robin Williams could make a joke out of anything and get everybody laugh. But it wasn't just what he was saying; it was the energy he carried with him too, that helped with his humor. And
the generation before him, Jonathan Winters,
yeah,
who basically taught him how to do it.
yeah. So there you go, right? But it's the same thing. They don't always lead with their best stuff. In fact, they don't. They'll hook you, and they'll kind of go, okay, this is up, down, and eventually what happens is everybody gets lost in the rhythm. So once you get lost in it, it doesn't matter. You can tell bad jokes, good jokes, and it was Stephen King, ironically, that made me look into comedy like that seriously. Then I was reading Pratchett, and then I was reading Alien Martinez is another really good comedic writer. Sometimes he's not really. He had his tone. His tone is somewhere a little more in the vein of serious, but he's got enough. He's more like Peter David. He's got a serious tone, but has a good sense of humor about himself too, to boot, which I think is really really good. But like all of which to say like it, but it's such a tricky balance because if you go one step too far or one step too little, it's like okay, that wasn't good. It's like dad jokes are funny, kind of funny, one or two in there, but the whole thing's dad jokes. You're just not gonna. You're just eventually gonna be like, okay.
Yeah, and that's the other difference between stand-up and written humor is that as a stand-up comedian, you can have a shtick and you can tell the same kind of joke all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And like Jeff Foxworthy with his, you may be a redneck.
Oh, cool, yeah.
That kind of thing. So you can focus on one kind of humor, but when you're writing a book, you have to put in a variety of kinds of humor in order to reach everyone in your audience. And it's like when I'm teaching a class, I have to take into account there are different learning styles.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to have something in my lesson plan for every one of those learning styles to make sure that the gist of the lesson gets taught to everyone in the room. And so as an author, what I have to do is I have to have some verbal humor, some punning, some sarcasm, maybe some slapstick, and it is possible to put slapstick into a book.
Absolutely.
Okay, and some situational humor and some character humor, and it's like a whole recipe of humors that I have to put in there. And if your particular mood is for verbal humor, then the other jokes aren't going to seem as funny because they're not really to your taste. But you're going to get the ones that I put in there that are to your taste. And that's the trick, really, when you're writing humor in a novel, is to make sure that you've got a nice variety of types of humor in your story so that everyone's going to laugh at least once or twice.
Yes. And every once in a while, and I'm speaking of Terry Pratchett, since we're here, it hits you with a joke so profound it makes you think.
Yes.
And for me, it was Eric. It's the only Rincewind novel I will recommend to people. With all due respect to Pratchett, his City Watch, Granny Weatherwax, and Death stuff is so much better. And anything else, right, is so much better than Rincewind. Rincewind was always meant to be just a one-trick pony. But Eric is Rincewind at his best, because in that story, the knight is supposed to slay the dragon. And the dragon wins. and that's great. And then you see what people do in fear of the dragon, and then I stopped laughing. It's like, oh, that's true. Damn, that's a great comedian. Because and that's a great comedian does. A great comedian. Jon Stewart did it for a very long time. To a lesser extent, Stephen Colbert did it. John Oliver kind of does it. I realized why I don't like Oliver as much as Stewart. I actually figured it out why I don't like him quite as much. He goes too long for me. I think Stewart was better when it comes to nuance, right? I don't need a full decapitation takedown of. I can see the absurdity. I just think it goes a little too far, beaten over the head sometimes.
What about Trevor?
But Oliver, Stewart, Colbert,
Trevor Noah.
Yeah, Trevor Noah. Yeah, I feel bad for him because he had to follow that. Good God. You have to follow that. Oh.
But he's done a good job, I think.
It took him a while. It took him a while to get comfortable with the show, because it was one of those situations where people expected a certain thing, and he had to figure out how to keep that somewhat and add his own thing to it, because it could not be Jon Stewart's show light. It couldn't be that. It had to be something else. But you couldn't just get there right away either. You had to kind of go. You had to rebuild the people that stayed behind. You had to rebuild their trust, and then slowly bring it to where you want to go. So he had a very interesting balancing act, right? So, but
he got to the point where you could hear his voice speaking the lines and know that those words would not have come out of Jon Stewart's mouth.
Yeah, that took about a year. It took about a year to get there, but once he got there, he was good, right? But again, it's also he had to find his own voice in the show. It's a real that's a balancing act. That's a balancing act of fulfilling the formula and bringing something new to it, and that's an interesting discussion. But that's the best thing comedy can do. When comedy makes you think, right? When comedy makes you think, when comedy makes you look at things in a way that you hadn't considered, right? Because now you're laughing at it, right? Wait, that's true.
Yeah. Pratchett turned a funhouse mirror onto the world.
Yes.
That's the way I like to express it.
So what's your favorite Pratchett? I'll tell you mine. But what's your favorite one?
Repo Man.
That's a good one. That's a fun one. Mine is The Truth. I enjoyed that. I like that he actually was able to make fun of himself in a very neat way, because having a reporter interview some of the characters from an outside perspective, I don't think it's not the one I would recommend for a first time Discworlder, but it's like after you've read all the characters once, that's the one you go to, because that one is a great takedown of them all, except for maybe Death, because Death is was the one constant. I will say this: Terry Pratchett's last tweet made me cry. The last tweet on his thing, that made me cry, because it was Death taking him away, and it's like, what a good ending. Oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah. it was perfect, but goddamn, that is what a thing. But no, like if you could like I think great writing, great authors should aspire to be like the contemporaries they model themselves. And humor in fiction. That's Kurt Vonnegut. That's Terry Pratchett.
Yeah.
Those are the guys. I don't consider what's that, Hunter S. Thompson humor, although there's definitely some dark humor in that too sometimes, right? But it's yeah, like seek what the master sought, and there's some great like writers that do funny stuff. And honestly, I'll say this to everybody again here, although Arlene Marks is definitely someone you should check out, Peter David is criminally underrated and should definitely be sought out by more people. So that's just yeah. There you go. Sorry, I'm a fanboy. I'm a fan of everybody.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm a fan. So
there's humor in every one of my stories.
Yes.
I cannot write a story without some kind of humor in it, because that's just,
it's not real. Like honest to God, laughter helps us cope. Like honestly, yes. it helps us cope because
it's healthy.
Yeah.
It actually is healthy. It's like when they discover the healing properties of chicken soup, and every Jewish mother in creation went, yes, finally, you know.
Yes.
But laughter really does help. It the body has tremendous healing properties.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we really are much more resilient as a species than a lot of us think we are. And that's because we laugh. How many animals in the animal kingdom, how many animals are there who laugh?
I can think of two others. I can think of maybe two others. Dolphins, hyena, laughing hyena. The other one's kind of a lame joke. Right? The other one's kind of a lame joke, but dolphins laugh for sure. I do.
Yeah.
But I do think that it's interesting to mention the animal kingdom, that there are animals definitely with a sense of play. I like cats and dogs.
They all play.
They all play, and it's great. Like I love doing cats. It's really fun. Although sometimes my hand will be all red marks of all the claw wrestling. I'll wrestle the cat with my hand with the claws, and we're just, no one's really hurting anybody. They're just gripping you hard, not just so they have a grip. They're not trying to hurt you. It's kind of just this fun little but we're playing, and it's fun, and it's totally a great feeling. And it's like the one thing we all have in common in this universe is we all like to play. But one thing we can all do is laugh. And the best thing about laughter, the final thing about laughter, is laughter. You mentioned this earlier, but I think I want to take it one step further. Laughter doesn't just create distance; it helps us forget. And something I've said when I said this was in my conversation with Mark Leslie. Laughter helps us forget, and forgetting is not a terrible thing. I realized what trauma actually was. It's that inability to forget. If you can find a way to, we never forget big moments of depression in our lives. We never forget them.
Yeah.
But we do forget the full feeling of it. We do forget that. The impact, unless we can't. And if we can't, that means we're hurt. There's something inside us that we have to deal with and let go, and because we can't forget. But when we laugh, we do forget. And when we come back, it's not so bad anymore because the pain has been forgotten just a little bit. And when it does, and that's the best, that is the best argument for laughter existing, because laughter helps us forget. The only downside to it, sometimes we do the same stupid stuff more than once. I'm guilty. Yeah. and fool me once, So it's like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, I just say I'm a moron. It's like, yeah, that one's on me. Got me twice.
Okay.
I take myself very seriously. What can I say? I take myself very. It's important when you come on the air on public, you gotta be this serious at least some of the time. Because why not, right? So that all said, I think we have a good interview here. What do you think?
I think this was wonderful, and thank you so much for having me on as a guest.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed the discussion.
No, I enjoyed it too. So before we go, we're going to do this one last time. Promote your coming book, but this time, this is what I also want you to do. I want people to know where they can find you, because you're awesome, and people should get to know you better, right? So.
Okay. Well, I have 2 Facebook pages. One is Arlene F. Marks, and that's my author's page. And then I have another page as Arlene Marks, and that's a little more personal. You can also find my webpage at www.thewritersnest, all one word, .ca.
So, like, hold on. See if we got this. That one? Like, that's it?
That's right.
Excellent.
Okay, and basically that's it. You can send me emails at. There's actually, if you go onto the website, you can send an email from there.
Yeah, do that. Do that, folks. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, this has been my 550th episode. My guest, the incredible Arlene Marks. You want to come back sometime?
Next time? I'd love to.
Yeah. Okay. So next time you come back, show me a different owl.
Okay.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
And here's what we'll do. Since we seem to like about passion and obsession and laughter, I'll try to come up with something silly. Because truth is, like, when this is over, my next audio I'm putting up, I'm literally counting the number of times I made her laugh in that episode. That's actually so yeah,
okay.
Job, but somebody's got to do it. With that all said, this is Arlene Marks. She's amazing. Check out her book. I am very thrilled. Tell your editor thank you. I owe her one, and also give her an invite. She can come on the show too. I promise. We'll be
I'll let her know.
Yeah, and beyond all that, if you want to support this podcast, click the follow button on my Twitch, twitch.tv/justjoshingpodcast. My YouTube channel is Joshua Pandolaresco. New videos are imminent. I had made a decision that one of the ones that was giving me problems, so I'm going to fix that one on my own time and start releasing all the episodes now. But for the rest, it's Poetry Month. Alice Zero is up on Amazon. Pick it up if you guys want to do that. Stay inspired. Keep shining in the dark. And I'll see you guys tomorrow with a streamer and one of my beta readers. She's probably going to beat me on the air with one of my latest releases, but that's okay. You guys take care, and I'll talk to you soon. That one's done. And